Learning Through Two Languages, Fostering Bilingualism. Week 2, The Conceptual Reservoir. The guiding question for this week: how do bilingual students access information and express what they know when they are learning through two languages? Teachers of bilingual students who function in more than one language during their day, can benefit from some basic understandings about language acquisition. The key concepts for this week are common underlying proficiency, conceptual reservoir, and pathways in and out. This visual was first made popular by Jim Cummins and represents what is known as the dual iceberg theory of language acquisition. The idea behind the visual is that the language that we produce is built upon a deeper knowledge within our brains, and that all languages access that same knowledge base. The term common underlying proficiency is used to counter the incorrect view of different languages occupying different places in our brains, disconnected from one another. In other words, underlying how we express ourselves through any language is everything we know. This visual represents a critical concept in language acquisition and is important to understand. However, the visual as it stands does not necessarily provide teachers with a vision of how to make use of this information. It can be helpful to think of our brain as a conceptual reservoir that contains all of our knowledge and understandings about the world. From birth onward, we add to this reservoir and represent what we know. The pathways in, how we add to the reservoir, are listening, observing, reading, imitating, and doing. These are receptive skills because they describe how we receive information. The pathways out are called expressive skills because they are the ways we represent what we know. Expressive skills are speaking, writing, artistic expression, and physical movement. Monolingual speakers of any language will always add to the conceptual reservoir and express what they know in their one and only language. This is represented by the red arrows labeled L1 going in and out of the reservoir. A monolingual Thai speaker will add to and represent what they know through only Thai. A monolingual French speaker through only French, etc. A person can develop a shallow reservoir or a deep reservoir. Our goal as educators is to fill students' reservoirs as deeply as possible. Notice that the deeper the reservoir, the wider the pathways. As we learn more, the pathways in and out grow stronger. As the pathways grow stronger, it is easier to fill the reservoir more deeply and to represent what is known more precisely. So what happens when we begin to learn a second language? This represents what happens for people who experience what is called bilingual first language acquisition. In other words, children who from birth are in environments where two or more languages are spoken and develop the two languages simultaneously. This is also called simultaneous or concurrent bilingualism. These people have L1 pathways in two languages simultaneously. Notice the depth of their conceptual reservoir. The other kind of bilingualism is sequential bilingualism. In other words, a person begins to learn or acquire an additional language after learning their native or primary language. Again, notice the conceptual reservoir. When we begin to learn a second language, we don't need to build a new reservoir. Rather, we begin to express what we already know and understand through the second language. This is represented by the blue arrow labeled L2 going out of the reservoir. For example, once you understand the concept of shape, that is, that objects have a shape, that some of these shapes are regular and others are irregular, and that a three-sided shape is a triangle, a four-sided shape is a square, a closed curve shape is a circle. You don't need to relearn shape to learn how to express the names of shapes in other languages. You not only can learn the words for different shapes in a second language, but you might also build on your knowledge of numbers to see how the names of some shapes are related to the number of sides. In English, the prefix tri in the word triangle is related to 3. In Spanish and Finnish, the names for triangle and square are related to the number words for 3 and 4. Is it possible to learn new things and add new information to the conceptual reservoir, even through a language we don't yet speak well? Of course it is. That is what we expect of English language learners in school every day. The blue arrow, labeled L2, represents learning through the second language. While it is certainly easier to learn new information and represent what we know through our stronger language, and more challenging through a new language, it is not only possible but critically necessary. Research suggests that the academic success of bilingual students does not depend solely on whether or not the students receive primary language instruction, but to a great extent on the quality of instruction they receive through English. From here on out in this module, the L2 arrows will be referred to as the second language pathway. The second language pathway encompasses all the strategies that teachers and students use to present, make sense of, and communicate information. The understandings we have gained about what good second language pathway teaching looks like contribute to the academic success of all students in the classroom. What is important to remember is that transfer needs to be mediated, orchestrated, facilitated by teachers. We need also to acknowledge that transfer goes both ways. The more we know in our first language, the easier it will be to learn more about those topics through our second or third language. When we learn about something through our second language, we can think more deeply about it through our first, given the impetus and sometimes the vocabulary words. It is not automatic that students will know the words for measurement or principles of democracy or the life cycle of plants in their primary language, if they learned about those topics in school. But they need to know that those words exist, that people who speak their language also discuss these topics and contribute to the world's knowledge about them. It is important to note that reading and writing are means to accessing and adding to the reservoir, but they are not the ultimate goal. Conceptual development, knowledge about important topics and higher-order thinking skills are the ultimate goal. While these skills are greatly facilitated by literacy, they can also be developed by interacting with concepts orally and with visual images, models, diagrams, charts, and pictures. Parents play a vital role in deepening their children's conceptual reservoirs. The less access there is to primary language instruction or support in school, the more critical it becomes that parents help deepen their children's conceptual reservoir in their strongest language. As an example, think of Andre, a monolingual English speaker, as he cooks with his mother and grandmother. While he and his mother are cooking, they talk about doubling recipes and substituting ingredients, reminisce about holiday foods, or tell family stories. Not only is there tons of language and thinking, they are strengthening their family bond and passing down important cultural information. When Andre cooks with his grandmother, a recent immigrant with little English proficiency, conversation is limited to a series of commands: stir, not so much, a little more, but not the rich dialogue he had with his mom. We want the types of interactions Andre had with his mother. We want parents to talk in their strongest language with their children in order to be able to impart knowledge, stretch thinking, and strengthen family ties. Many immigrant parents worry that continuing to speak their mother tongue with their children will hinder their English academic performance. The conceptual reservoir demonstrates that parents should use their strongest language to help deepen the knowledge of their children. It is up to the school to tap into that knowledge and help students express it through English. It is a gift to speak more than one language, because our brains act as conceptual reservoirs. The more you know through any language, the better you will be able to do in school and in life. Students benefit when teachers organize instruction to help them take what they know in one language and express it through the other. This can't be a casual comment. It needs to be stated, restated, and reinforced as often as possible with both students and their families.